everybody, I'm Maritza Barone, and this is the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you heard or read or were told something that you simply could not unhear? Something that caused you to make positive changes so that you could become the best version of yourself? Well, we share this show with access to inspiring and empowering humans who will motivate you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate you. Sit back, settle in, and let this be the day you hear something that simply cannot be unheard. Hello and welcome back to Things You Can't Unhear. This is episode 115 and I am very grateful that you're here today because today we're going to be talking about two of my favourite topics, and they are the power of voice and evolution and personal change. So get ready, friends. Today's guest will light that fire in your belly, just like it did for me, to make some truly inspired and powerful life changes. We welcome none other than Kemi Nekvapil to the show. She's one of Australia's leading coaches and speakers, and you may have seen her grace the stages of Business Chicks events, or perhaps read one of her award-winning books. She's most recently just launched a book called Power, which is a woman's guide to leading and living without apology. And it's a highly rated bestseller that no doubt you'll want to get your hands off after listening to this conversation to get more Kemi in your life wherever you can. Now, Kemi has studied purpose at the Gross National Happiness Centre in Bhutan. Could you think of a better place to ever be? And she's also trained with Brené Brown to become a certified Dare to Lead facilitator. And now she works with teams and organisations to create daring leaders and courageous cultures. Kemi's one of those people that continues to evolve and become the best version of herself time and time again. And I noticed during our chat that she shared how she thought about a certain topic then in the past, and then how she thinks about a certain topic now. So she's truly aware that her mindset will continue to change for the better and develop and grow as she becomes a new version of who she is. And so I loved everything about that energy and the authenticity and the strength behind that message. Kemi shares with us her life experiences, her passions and her pains so that we can also become the best versions of ourselves. I truly loved my time chatting to Kemi with so many similarities in the way that we think and in our mission. So sit back, take it all in, and perhaps, if I were you, maybe grab a pen because there's some golden nuggets in here for all of us to remember and bring into our lives. So welcome, Kemi, to Things You Can't Unhear. I'm so pleased to have your smiling face right in front of me today and to have your beautiful energy here.
I'm looking forward to it. I already know it's going to be a beautiful conversation, so very happy to be here.
I know we've only spoken for a couple of minutes and I'm already like, let's hit record. There's too much goodness that's going to come from these initial chats of ours. So when I first laid eyes on you, it was at a Business Chicks event and you were interviewing or introducing Marie Folio. And I always get blown away by the talent that's introducing the talent. It happens to me all the time. And I'm like, hang on a minute, who's that person? She's great. What's going on there? And and that's when I became a big fan of you and your work and everything that you're about. And like I said to you before we hit record, I'm part producing Business in Colour podcast and heard you on that recently too. And again, was just blown away by your message. And I think there's so many synchronicities with what you're about and what I'm about that I felt it, really important that you joined me here today and we had this conversation.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. And I would hope as well, you said that you're interested in my work. I hope that you were very impressed with my dancing with Marie on stage. With that
I was.
Dance that we did.
It was the overall energy, I must say. You really, I read into people's energy quite quickly and you brought it, girlfriend. You were there 1000%.
Yeah,
now,
we had fun.
I know you're all about intention setting. So I listened to your Shift podcast earlier today and understand that you set an intention for every morning and every day that you go into. So I was just curious to kick this off as to what your intention was this morning.
Oh my gosh, you want my innermost secrets?
Yes, we do.
My intention for today was impactful presence.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to be definitely sharing that here today. Now, I know you're a coach, I know you're a speaker, I know you're an author, and your main message is about power. So I want to ask the question, and you can take us through some of your maybe life-defining moments and your journey, but what ultimately does power mean to you?
Well, what power means to me now, as a woman in midlife, compared to what power meant to me as a teenager, compared to what power meant to me as a child, is all completely different.
Yeah.
What it means to me now is to not apologize for my presence, to not accept any form of, to not be in any spaces where I feel that I am made to feel that I'm not worthy to be there. What power meant to me as a teenager was, oh, and actually let me add to that as well, what power means to me now as well, and the work that I do is also creating spaces for other women to be able to stand in and own their power, and for us as a community to not apologize for any spaces that we want to be in. What power meant to me as a teenager was trying to be like everybody else. I thought that would, and not that I was thinking about power as a teenager, but when I look back now, to be with the cool kids, to try and fit in with everyone else, which is ridiculous because I was always the only Black child at school. So I don't know how I thought that was going to work. But and power for me as a child, I didn't think about power and I didn't have any. So I think we go from this idea of being a child, not having any power, to a teenager thinking that power meant being with the cool kids, having a boyfriend, all of those sorts of things. And then, as a woman now in midlife and the work that I do, that power is about unapologetically owning who I am and creating a space for other women to do exactly the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Here. And too many times we hold back because we fear being judged and compared to other people. And it's just that those handcuffs that those invisible handcuffs that we put on ourselves, that I think when we reach a certain stage of our lives, we begin to give less Fs, really, right?
Yes.
We begin to care a lot less about what other people think. And it's so damn empowering. But what I heard there was change. So it seems like you've experienced constant growth and change throughout your life and all of your life lessons. How have people responded to you changing? How has that evolved over time, and the people surrounded you?
What a great question. How have people responded to my change? Well, do you know what happens? And you probably know this as well. Because once we, obviously as a coach, it is incredibly important to me to always be doing my work. For me, it would be out of integrity for me to hold space for other people in areas of change and transformation and growth, and the ickiness and stickiness of that if I was not doing that for myself. Such a great question, because I think what happens, my experience is that some people can't meet the change and they can't meet the growth and they can't be with it. And so I very much believe in that quote of a reason, a season, a lifetime. And so, I am so invested in the relationships that I am in that time, but I'm also very open to those relationships changing, some of them ending, so that I can continue on my growth. And also some, I wrote a column a few years ago, actually for Business Chicks, that spoke about, we will let people go in our lives and people will let go of us. And that is okay. And if we're on a journey of growth, which I think if we're not, what are we doing? We're stagnating or we're dying. We have to bring grace to that. We have to own the grief of that, whether we're letting go or be let go of, but to also know that is part of life and that is part of transformation. So, the people that I spend my time with now are not the same people that I spent time with 10 years ago. The people that I spent time with 10 years ago are not the same people that I spent with, 10 years before that. So I've always been very happy to, go with where I needed to go and understand and honor those relationships that may or may not walk alongside me at that time, and to consciously and respectfully and gracefully step away from those relationships if I've needed to, and consciously and gracefully be allowed to let go of, just knowing that who I am either is stopping that person's growth or they're moving or whatever it is, and just to know, okay, this hurts, you know, and there's grief in that, but actually I get it. I want that person to do what they need to do, and if I'm no longer part of their journey, I'm okay with that.
How is it when people talk to you, people you've known for a long time, and they're like, you've changed, insinuating that it's a bad thing?
It insinuates shame. And if anyone would say that to me, I'd say, thanks. Awesome. That was my intention. So glad you noticed.
That was something you said in the Business in Color podcast. And I actually wrote it down. I found it in my journal just before. And it was like, thank you. It's been my intention to change. And, you know, that power behind you saying that. We are supposed to change. We are supposed to
change. Yeah. And I think for people that say that, especially with that kind of sneer, with maybe a level of shame, or there's something wrong with you doing that, as I said, they may not be coming along with you for the next part of your journey. And generally what that means is, I'm scared that your change affects my relationship, that you're going somewhere that I can't go, or I'm too scared to go. And it's a way of saying, I'm scared that this relationship is going to change. But how it comes out, as you said, is in this kind of like, you've changed, you over there have done something bad. I need to make sure that our relationship isn't threatened. So yeah, you know, when people maybe had said that to me in the past, I would definitely feel that, oh my gosh, there's something, oh my gosh, I've hurt them, I've done something wrong. I don't have anyone around me now, to be honest, that would say to me, you've changed, in a negative, sneering way at all. But if there was, that's exactly what I'd say. I'd say, thank you for noticing.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. Give them back the gratitude.
Yeah.
Well, we touched on you having an incredible career and being part of Business Cheeks and writing books, and I want to jump into that, but I want to go back to the beginning and talk about young Kemi and the experiences that led you to becoming the person that you are today. So I know many of us have our own life journeys that others can learn from, and as we share them, others can take out the key learnings from our own individual experiences. So tell me a little bit about your story. Tell me who young Kemi was, and so we can get to know, you know, your roots.
Well, one thing I definitely know is that young Kemi was as multi-passionate as current Kemi, that's for sure. So I was one of the tens of thousands of Nigerian children born to middle-class Nigerian parents in the 1970s. Which meant that at that time, there was a really big movement for Nigerian children to have an English education. That was partly from the viewpoint of our parents, which is what are the best choices for my children, which is the choice I think most parents make, and also colonization. I don't think we can be at this point in our evolution as a human species to know how much colonization has taken over the world. And so my parents very much believed that the only way their children were going to have a good education was for it to be English, which meant that we were fostered out to mainly white families in England in the 1970s. And it didn't go well for some of those kids. Some of those kids never really made it back to Nigeria. The plan was that we'd all be educated in England and we would become the lawyers and the doctors in Nigeria. I didn't become either. I did marry a lawyer. So my mum or mummy, so it doesn't matter how old you are in Nigeria, your birth parents are always mummy and daddy. So my mum is happy that I married a lawyer, even if I didn't become one. And so that meant that I had 5 primary carers by the time I was 13, and 6 adding my birth mother, actually, because I would go and see her in the holidays. Fostering is very different from adoption. My mum was always my mum, but I was parented by other people. And then at 13, I kind of, and that was the change. So for me, what I knew growing up, and also growing up as the only Black girl at school, what I learned, what society told me, what some of those foster families told me was my Blackness was something. It was not a good thing, basically. So because of racism, there was the kind of internalized racism of, well, I was told Black people are bad people, but you're a good one. So I navigated kind of the first half of my life thinking, oh, I'm Black, which means I'm bad. But if I'm really good, maybe I can somehow maybe that can overtake my Blackness. Maybe my goodness can make my Blackness invisible. So I spent a lot of time being good, which I know a lot of people, a lot of women especially, that we are socialized to be good, to not rock the boat, to always be available to other people. And so that was kind of how I navigated the first half of my life, until at 13, I arrived with my last set of foster parents and was suddenly in a space and in a place where I was allowed to choose certain aspects of my life and what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. And then at 18, I read my first personal development book. So up until then, I was definitely understood that life is what's handed to you. You make the best of what you have. The people around you are the people that are around you. You make the best of them. Never did I hear anything around, no, you can change your circumstances, or no, you can co-create a life depending on your mindset and the people you spend time with and the books that you read and how much you're willing to learn. You know, once you leave school, there's kind of the education of school, but then there's life lesson and life learning. So at 18, I read my first personal development book, which was called The Celestine Prophecy.
Excellent. I was going to ask.
You know that one? Yeah. And I tried to dip back into it a few years ago and I was like, okay. It really resonated at 18, didn't quite resonate at the same time. But what I got from that book was, you get to create your life. Doesn't mean it's easy, doesn't mean there's not challenges in there, but that you don't have to just deal with the cards that you have been dealt. And that was something I had never heard before. And that was kind of the beginning of me of like, okay, you've lived a life up until now where you have been at the whim of other people's agendas, the whim of other people's narratives for you, the whim of other people's stories. Now you get to create your own.
And that's a huge message, isn't it? And opens like a can of worms or so many doors, whichever way you want to look at it, to look at life with a different perspective. 100%.
And some of those doors you might open, there might be worms behind there. So, you know, we can bring them together, the can of worms and the doors.
Yeah. So what changes did you make in your life when you received that message from that book?
I think the first thing, actually one thing I realized, one thing that I heard that I couldn't unhear was at 16, I had a divine download. I'm not sure who I first heard that from. It's not my phrase, but as soon as I heard it, I loved it. That I felt kind of came from the right, like it came into my head. So I just finished what's it called? What's PE? Physical education class at school. I was looking in the mirror, getting undressed or something, and all my friends were behind me. They all had boyfriends, or in my teenage head, they all had boyfriends. They all had boyfriends. And I didn't feel beautiful because what commercials and TV and magazines were telling me as a dark person, especially colorism. So it's not just about being of color, it's about the darker you are. And so I did not grow up beautiful. All my friends had, boyfriends. I spent a lot of time just not feeling great about myself. And I remember looking in the mirror and getting this kind of message from the right side of my head that came into me that basically said, if you keep comparing yourself to other people, you will never be happy. And I just knew, Maritza, in that moment that was true. I didn't question it. I knew that was a divine message for me at that moment. And I suddenly had that feeling of, so I might start navigating the world as me and not comparing me to other people, because then I'm going to keep losing because of how the world is set up and because of the systems that I have to operate under as a Black woman. And so that was kind of my first little message. So then when I got to that sort of Celestine prophecy of like, I get to create my life, that then for me was, I think actually one of the first things that happened for me is I really started getting into health. Actually, I grew up with a not great English diet. Like I love actually how I made just the other night, because it's turned autumn here in Melbourne. And it's like my whole body cell reaction is, it's time to make crumble, Kemi. It's time to make crumble. So there's one in the fridge right now. And roast potatoes. Like I did all of that the other night. I said to the kids, it's time for the English food. But I grew up with a lot of processed food and had no idea about the connection of processed food and how I felt and energy, and that junk food every day makes you feel junky. So I think obviously I went somehow from the Celestine prophecy. Obviously I had a conversation with someone, or I heard something around food. So I started getting into that and realized how different I felt when I fueled myself with different foods. And I remember my friends saying to me things like, oh, you're the healthy one, because I ate brown rice. And I still, I love ice cream. Like I still have beautiful Haagen-Dazs ice cream and those things, but I just became very mindful about what I put into my body had a real impact in how I felt about myself. So I think that would be the first change that I made, was how I fueled my body changed.
And moving into the personal development space. So you had these massive aha moments. You've changed your mindset. You've changed your perspective. You've started to change your diet. You're making healthier choices. When did it become a career move? And when did you say to yourself, you know what, I've learned all this. I need to share this information with other people and help them shine their light?
I went from school to training as a baker. And then a lot of the kind of family bakeries were closing when I left bakery school. And even though I didn't really know about food ethics at that time, I knew I didn't want to work in a supermarket bakery, because what they were doing at the time, I'm not sure if it's changed now, is that they were buying in frozen baguettes from France that the bakers would then cook in the morning at the supermarket, and it was being packaged as, you know, French freshly baked bread. And I just knew that is not okay. So then I shifted from baking, because I wanted to be in family bakeries. I didn't know I did until I realized what the other option was. So I shifted from that to chefing. But the whole time I also went to drama school in that time. So I became an actor for 7 years, and I really enjoyed acting. It was really fun. I was not one of those people that had dreamed of being an actor, because my childhood was all about survival. And so I remember having a conversation, another kind of life-defining moment, with another actor. And she was saying to me, oh my gosh, we're in the Royal Shakespeare Company together. Actually, we were in New York doing a season with the Royal Shakespeare Company in New York. And we were chatting in the dressing room. And she said to me, I just want to be Lady Macbeth. If I can be Lady Macbeth in a Royal Shakespeare show, I could die and go to heaven. And I remember being really excited for her, but I remember thinking, I don't want to do that. I would not die and go to heaven. Wow, if that's the pinnacle of acting, and I completely understand when it comes to female roles, that is a pinnacle role. But I was like, that's not what I want. And also, I'll be honest, I did not think that a Black woman would ever be cast as Lady Macbeth. So for me, it was kind of like, okay. So I don't want that. I also don't know if that's possible. And I realized, I don't think this is what I want to do forever. And I think that's the personal development thing. I'm just kind of tapping into something deeper. Like, this is fun, and I have incredible opportunities, and this is an amazing adventure, but I don't think this is why I'm here. And I think because of my childhood of so much change, and although it was very scary and very isolating and very lonely to leave a career where on the outside it was going very well, a lot of my peers I've been at drama school with would have loved the opportunities that I had. I also knew that I had to leave it. It took me 18 months, so I had to get into a point of being really unhappy. It wasn't, oh, this is fun, but I don't think I want to do this forever. It was, this is fun, but who do you think you are to lead this career that you could never have dreamt? That who do you think you are to walk away from something that people would kill to have? Who do you think you are to decide, oh, I don't want this anymore? So there was a lot of kind of internal reckoning around that thing of, you should be grateful, which is what I grew up with. You should be grateful that you get to be raised by white people. There should be a sense of gratitude there. So I felt the same with acting. You should be grateful. But after 18 months, I went for an incredible audition. And I remember walking out thinking, I feel like I'm selling myself out now. Like I did not want to be in that room. That the casting directors were asking me questions, and all that was going through my head was, you don't care about me. I don't care about this opportunity. If I keep doing this, I'm kind of lying to myself. And so that was when I decided, you're now unhappy and you need to leave acting. But what I did was I went back to cooking. So I was like, one thing I know I love, and I'll love forever, because for me, cooking and food is like the ongoing delight of like, oh, I can put this with this, and oh, what happens if I put this here, and Brussels sprouts with ginger, and what happens here? And so I went back to food for a while. And then I shared with a very dear friend what I wanted to do. She said, what do you want to do? Like, you've just given up this acting career. You're now back, you know, working in food. And by now I've become very committed to organic food and food ethics. And I said, and I'd been into yoga. So I'd been doing yoga for a long time. So once again, the spiritual aspect came in for me. And I just said to this friend, I said, I want to teach yoga, be a chef, and travel the world. So that, I don't even know, there's not even a job title for that. But I said, that's what I want to do. That would be my ultimate. About a week later, she came running into the restaurant that I was working in, one of London's first organic cafes. And she said, you won't believe this. And I said, what? She said, I've just met a man who has just bought a resort in Thailand, who needs a chef that has A-list celebrities. He can't find a chef that doesn't keep going crazy when he mentions the names of the people that are going to be frequenting this resort. And she said, I just thought of you because you're already, she said, you're A-list. I wasn't A-list in London at all, but being an actor in a soap for 3.5 years, a protagonist, a Black female, you know, I did have a name and people did recognize me. She said, you are one of those people, so you're not going to have any issues with those people. So I met this bloke in a pub that night. That was our kind of official meeting. And within half an hour of us speaking, he said, the job is yours. He said, there's no money. There's no pay, but you'll get all your food and board, and any adventures that we go on in Thailand, you get to come along. And I said, okay, I'll go home. I'll think about it. That night, my agent had left me a message on my answer phone in the days that we had answer phones. And she said, you've been offered like one of the biggest opportunities that a Black actor, especially your age, has ever been offered, which was to act, direct, and feature in a particular comedy series that was called at the time 4 Non-Blondes. It then became 3 Non-Blondes because I decided I'm going to Thailand.
Wow. Well, you manifested the hell out of that one, didn't you? And then, and then you got thrown in a bit of a curveball just to test you a little bit more to say, hang on, do you really want it? How much do you actually want it? Here's this shiny opportunity we're just going to distract you with to see how much you want it.
Yeah. And that's what I share with clients now, and for myself as well. Like, when you've made a decision, the universe will always go, really? Are you sure? What about this though? But what about this? So yes, and what I didn't know, the kind of magic that then came from me taking this opportunity from a job of highly paid to no paid with a man I'd never met before, like I just met him in the pub, was that I met my husband, who was then to become my husband, hence why I now live in Australia, because he's Australian.
Synchronicities at their best. Isn't that brilliant?
100%.
I love that so much. Well, so that started you off on that pathway, and then from there, how did we get into where you are now?
Well, I started in the food space. So when I first came to Australia, I, was at home and wanted to be at home and could be at home with my children. But I'm always someone that has to be doing and creating. And, I had a little business called Kemi's Raw Kitchen because I've been starting to eat raw foods. And I would run these workshops and women would be asking me these questions like, what's got more calories, celery or cucumber? And I sort of joke, this isn't about dress size or weight. This is very much about fueling your body to do what you want to do in your life. What do you want to do in your life? And what I was getting back was, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I'll work it out when I've lost the 5 kilos. And that, after quite a while, started making me angry. And then it actually made me very sad. I remember actually crying at one point because I realized, wow, we have been fed this lie that our currency comes from our looks, our availability, and our weight. And so many women are missing why we are really here. And that's when I stepped into coaching and to become an accredited International Coach Federation coach, so that I have a governing body behind me, so that it's very much not about helping people. I think that disempowers people to help. As a coach, it's not my job to give advice to my clients. My job is to hold a space where they can feel safe. I don't have an agenda for them, but I walk alongside them as they work out, who do I want to be? What do I want to contribute? What is getting in the way? What are the narratives I have that are stopping me? What are the narratives that are stopping me from even deciding what I want? I'll have someone say to me, I don't know what I want. And I might challenge them by saying, are you sure it's that you don't know what you want? Or is it that you don't think you're worthy of what you want? Is it sure that you don't know what you want, or that you're too scared to go for it? Because sometimes we do know, but it's been kind of trained out of us. We said it once to a teacher, or we said it to a parent or to a friend, and we were shut down, and we just thought that is too vulnerable to name what we want. And so I'm just going to lock that away. So it can take some time. And, I'm very much into women leading, and that we're at a time in the world right now where the world needs women to lead. And yet we have these internal obstacles where we think we're not worthy enough to lead, or that our leadership style isn't good enough, or we don't know enough, or we're not enough. And I love creating a space for women to actually stand in their power and go, no, do you know what? That is not true. I may have skills that I need to learn along the way that I don't know, and that is fine. But me as a human being, I am worthy to be here.
And the process of that coaching is priceless. I've just literally hired 2 sessions in my own business coach and life coach, Kelly Carthy. She's up here on the Sunshine Coast. And in literally 3 hours, I've had that many moments where I have seen things differently, because she's asked me a question and it's made me find the answer within. Never once has she given me the advice, like you said. It's all in here. It's just someone else triggering that thought and that thing that you've sort of shoved down pretty far away, or a conversation, like you said, that you had when you were 17 years old that caused a limiting belief within you that you didn't realize you had. I've got many of those that I've been working through as well. I mean, I was a shy 17-year-old who was too afraid to speak and introduce herself in a new classroom. You know, when you go around the circle and you get those, oh God, it's nearly my turn. I have to introduce myself. I don't want anyone to look at me. And I'd get all those butterflies and hot sweats. And now I've transitioned to become a speaker for a living. So there's this huge element of growth that I've worked through. And I resonate deeply with what you said about being in that acting environment and just realizing it's not enough and there's more to what you're about. And for years too, as a presenter, I was handed scripts and as a producer handed briefs. And these were other people's words just handed over to me. Here you go. Create that, make that amazing, speak that and look and sound fabulous and sell our product. And after 10 years of doing it, I was just in this competitive industry and trying to figure out why on earth I am putting myself through this pain and struggle when truly I didn't want to be there. And I had so much more to sharing my own voice and what was in here, but I had to break through all of the barriers to get there. And now I do that. Now I help people do that through a session called The Power of Voice, which, I'm about 10 sessions in and I'm absolutely loving it. And that's why your work resonates so much with me, because that's pretty much what you're about too. You're empowering people to find their own inner voice and lead with power.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting what you say about like taking other people's scripts, because I think what I'd got to when I got to New York with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I think when this woman said this, I want to be Lady Macbeth and that'd be amazing, I thought, I don't think I want to play other characters for the rest of my life. It has taken so much for me to own who I am. And I am really excited about the character of Kemi, not like the character as in a mask, but like, who is Kemi? I've been told for so long who I get to be in the world. And I thought I'm more interested in working out who Kemi is than I am in exactly taking on somebody else's character. I had friends that I was at drama school with who were incredible actors, and their light came from taking on other characters. Like that was their thing, that was their passion, that was their dream. And I think when you're with someone where that is their dream, and then you get to reflect and go, oh, I don't feel like that about it. Like, so maybe that's not where I want to invest my time and my energy moving forward. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So tell me about the book that you've written. It's recently come out and it's got all of these amazing insights in it that come from your lived experience. How does it help people?
Oh, look, it's beautiful because, one of the things about having a book out in the world now is that once it hits a bestseller list, that it's really supporting people and it's resonating with people on a really deep level. So I wrote this book called Power, A Woman's Guide to Living and Leading Without Apology, because, as I said, I believe that this is a time for women to really own who we are. And I wanted to break power down so that we can look at power in a way that we want. I think for so many of us, we've experienced a form of power that none of us want. Like, we don't want a part of it. And so, the Oxford Dictionary definition of the word power is the ability or capacity to do something in a particular way, which means that we all have some level of power, and yet we operate in systems, whether it's the patriarchy, racism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, whatever it is, that tells us, no, you don't have power. Only these people over here have power. And when I facilitate workshops or when I speak from stage, I will ask, who has power? And it's always the same. It's always the white man in a suit. And that's a narrative that we all have. And that has definitely been how the world has been. And those particular, forms of power are still playing out in the world right now, which is why it's our chance as women to go, hey, there's another form of power. And I've broken the word power into an acronym, which is presence, because there's power in being present to yourself and other people. Ownership. There is power in owning your story and allowing and hearing the ownership of other people's story. Wisdom, that we all have an innate wisdom inside of us, and yet often we outsource our lives to other people because we don't trust ourselves. Equality, that we are equal to each other. I've had to learn, navigating the spaces that I have had to navigate in my life, that I am equal. I share a story in the book that I am a lead facilitator for the Hunger Project. So I find myself in places like Uganda, where we work with village leaders around what they're setting up for their life and their communities. And also I can facilitate programs on Richard Branson's Necker Island and be sitting next to Richard having a conversation, knowing that I am as equal as all of those humans, the village leaders in Uganda and Richard Branson, that I don't have to question my worth in those scenarios. And so equality internally is powerful, and then responsibility, that no one is coming to save us. You know, one thing I know growing up as a Black girl is that when I'd read fairy tales, which I love, I'm a writer, so I love stories, the princesses never looked like me. So I never had this narrative that someone was coming to save me. And so I've always known that no one is coming to save me and I'm responsible for my life. The shadow side of that, though, and that's my second book, The Gift of Asking, is that then I also believed, well, no one's going to help me either, and I can't ask for support. And, you know, I support is weakness and asking is weakness. So I've had to do my own personal development around that narrative as well. But together, you know, that whole acronym, if we are present and we take ownership of our lives and we trust our own innate wisdom and we know that we are equal to others and we take responsibility for our lives, that is power. And it's a power that is internal, that will get taken away from us. You know, I don't want to lie and say, oh, you buy this book and then you'll have your power forever. No, not at all. I lose my power all the time as a woman, as a Black woman, and yet I know that this acronym allows us to rebuild our power again and again and again, and know why either it was taken away from us, or why as women, because we're so smart, why we gave it away and what we can do next time in that situation. I am so excited about this book and the DMs that I'm getting from different women, you know, women that are now will email me now or DM me now, and they'll actually say their identifiers. You know, so they say, I am a 63-year-old Anglo woman, cisgendered, you know, because people are taking on this narrative of we are all different and we have to take ownership of who we are and then what we get to do with who we are from a term of leadership and how we want to live in the world.
And our differences are our powers, right? They're our superpowers. Yes. We need to learn to celebrate making the differences within us. And for so long, we haven't, like you just said, you always shied away because you were the woman, you had dark skin. Now we're like, let's celebrate this. And I'm so happy with the way that society is moving in this way, because there is a huge shift from 10 years ago, for example, and hopefully in another 10 years, we will see yet another shift. And I see it in the mindset of my daughters who are 10 and 12, and the way that they think about things is different. Like, they'll challenge things more. They'll see that things aren't certainly fair. They'll fight back, and they won't take things at, you know, that surface level.
Base level.
Yeah. Which we all grew up believing and just accepting.
100%. And I now have teenagers. So I have a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old, and my 16-year-old is non-binary, and I hear them speaking to their friends, and I feel so honored to spend time with the young people of today, like these 16, 17, 8-year-olds. Oh my gosh, you know. And I remember at the beginning when we were getting my youngest pronouns wrong, and, you know, and they'd be like, you've got to get it right. And I was like, hey, hold up. I said, let me just tell you something. Your generation has chosen my generation as your parents because we are willing to take this on, and we're willing to kind of work in this kind of confronting thing around pronouns and gender and stuff. I said, our parents, there is no way that this conversation would happen. I said, so you need to give us grace, because if I went to any of my parents and said, oh, I think I'm going to change my pronoun to a they would, I don't think they'd even hear me. Like, I just don't even think that wouldn't even be a thing. So yes, I think there's I'm a deep optimist. I've actually just written an article. I write weekly. I've written weekly for 8 years to my weekly words community. And just this morning, I wrote a piece that says our difference is our sameness. You know, that I grew up with people saying to me, you know, I don't see your color. And I knew there was something weird about that. I didn't know what it was, though, because I knew it's coming from a good intention. But I thought, oh, there's something about that. And now I know through my own understanding of racism and internalized racism and patriarchy and internalized patriarchy, I now know what that was saying was, that's too difficult for me, so I'm just going to pretend it's not there. And how it landed for me as a person of color was, oh, if you don't see my color, you don't see me, because I have to navigate the world in a very different way than you do. And I need you to see that, and I need you to hear it. I don't need you to walk in my shoes, because you can't, but I do need you to understand and believe my lived experience, because then that is where our sameness can meet. our humanity can meet if you can see my difference and honor that, and then I can see your difference and honor that, and together we can move forward.
And in doing that, you're showing up as your true self. You're not pushing any of that down or hiding anything away. You're celebrating that trueness of who you are. And then you can come to people then in such an authentic way, because you're not putting the curtain over the struggles that you've been through, or any of the challenges that you've come across. So it's really beautiful when you look at it in that way.
And Maritza, what's your heritage? I'm curious to know, what's your heritage?
My parents are both Greek Cypriot. So Dad was born in Cyprus, Mum was born here. Yes. Yeah. So
they would have had that experience, and you would have had your version of experience of navigating when you're the sort of minority in spaces and that sort of thing.
Exactly. And I've heard my father's stories of when he came here and went into high school as a 13-year-old and the challenges that he faced feeling as a minority and not being able to be seen and heard, and struggles that he probably still goes through today, because it's that generation that really doesn't and hasn't put in the time into feeling the pain from the past as much as I think our generation does. And so there is that holding on to those memories and still feeling the pain of that, discrimination, I suppose, of coming into a place where you are a minority. And I'm sure you've experienced that many times over in your life.
Yeah. So that's your dad's generation. And then have you experienced any of that for yourself, or is that just in your dad's generation?
Yeah, look, more so there. I was in a community at school with a lot of European families. Yeah. Okay. So I felt like we were definitely not a huge minority. We even had a Greek dancing class at our school, and it was just like there were so many Greek people that went to the school that they created a Greek dancing community. So I never really felt like a minority in that way. When I did live in Fiji, though, last year, there was that first time in my life where I was that minority, and it was quite an interesting eye-opener because I'd never been in that situation. And I was so pleased that I had created that experience for myself to be able to see things with a new perspective.
A new perspective, yeah. It's such an interesting thing, because many years ago, I used to say things like everyone should go somewhere where they are a minority at least once. But I also now know it's kind of simplistic, because it's kind of like that then negates kind of all of the racial structures. Like, it's different for my husband, who's a white man, to say go to India, even though he's a minority. There's still the colonization thing there, which is very different for me as a Black person going to India, but I do think there is definitely something to be, and also if you're a tourist, and if you're a tourist from a Western country, regardless of your ethnicity, that represents different, it's complex, but the beauty of the complexity is, I think, that more and more of us are willing to have these difficult conversations. And as someone that's, I trained with Dr. Brené Brown in 2019. And so as a Dare to Lead facilitator, that's part of being brave and being courageous, is having these conversations that are difficult and challenging, and we get it wrong and those sorts of things, but that actually this is the time now for us to recreate language and recreate what belonging means for each of us. And then when we look at personal development work, that is part of it, that when we can own who we are, and to really honor our stories and to let go. And this takes time. This isn't just coaching. This is sometimes therapy. This is sometimes therapy and coaching. But then when you get to stand on stage, if you're someone that speaks, or you get to be in your team, or you get to be in your family, and you're like, this is who I am. And I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud of my mistakes, and I'm not perfect, and I'm going to get it wrong. But I want to navigate the world as me, and I don't want to apologize for any part of me for any longer. I think for those of us that are older now, I sort of think of it as, okay, I'm 47 now. Let's say that I get a generous, set of years. Let's say I get 30 more years. I definitely do not want to spend the next 30 years of my life apologizing for any aspect of me.
Absolutely. Now, you talked about for those people who stand on stage and do want to share, but even for those people who just want to communicate with one person or 10 people, or enhance their relationships. And I've got a side business called Conscious Conversations, and we've literally just created a card deck that you can pull out a random card, and it will generate a deeper conversation with the people that you're sitting in front of. And you know what, it's immediate. The icebreaker is immediate within when you get curious and when you start giving people space, time, and attention to be able to be heard, and the safety to be heard without judgment. There's so much magic in that. There's so much magic
in that. There's so much magic in that. And there's just kind of, for me, it's kind of like when we look at, kind of, I said about being multi-passionate earlier, I used to apologize for parts of myself. Like I'm a real crafty. I love knitting. I love bullet journaling. I love like brush lettering. I'm a big gardener. I love flowers. I love country and Western music. There are so many kind of weird things that all of this sort of stuff. And I used to think, oh no, I can't tell that person that thing about me because they might think this about me. And, I have to hide that part of me and I have to do. It's just like, no, this is who I am. And I am so fine if you don't like it. Like, because we can't like all the people. I don't like all the people. All the people cannot like me. That is absolutely fine. There's such a freedom in that. There's such a freedom in that. I think that's power in itself. Just knowing you're not going to like everyone and everyone is not going to like you. And that is okay.
You know, what's been coming up a lot in my life and the people around me lately is people coming out almost. I'm calling it coming out, or the unmasking of being spiritual and being that entrepreneur, for example, who's got that business hat on and all of these executive clients, but has this hidden lifestyle of a spiritual, guru, but is too afraid to tell the world about it. I can't tell you how many people are coming to me with this at the moment. And they're like, I just want to merge my two worlds, but I don't want to lose my clients, lose my business, be perceived in a different way. Where do you sit with that? I want to know what advice you would give someone who came to you with that.
Well, I'll show you my Buddha statue to begin with, and then I have my Ganesh up there. And so it's interesting, isn't it? As a business owner, I want to work with people who know who I am, that they're attracted to, because we're attracted to people. I'm not talking about sexually at all. Like we are attracted to energies. I only want to work with people who know who I am, but when they reach out to me, they're like, oh, yes, I love that Kemi's so committed to beauty. And I love that Kemi's really committed to, stepping into this new language around inclusive language. And, I love that Kemi's really into fun and that power is fun. There's a chapter in the book, it's the power of fun. There's a chapter called the power of delight. I say that part of my activism in the world is joy, delight, and beauty. That's where I want to hang out. So for me, I'm into manifesting. I do a vision board every single year. And that's part of my craftiness and creativity. I want people that coming to me either because that resonates with them or because they want that in their life. Because part of because I think cutting that off and being scared of losing business means that you have to cut off a part of yourself for that business. I just don't think that's necessarily nourishing for the soul, nourishing for the spirit. I don't think it's sustainable. So there's a real beauty in, it's funny, do you know how people always talk about niche? You've got a niche down, you've got a niche down.
Yes.
I'm kind of not so great at that because my niching down is I want to work with women who are willing to do the work, right? And which means that they're willing to show up, they're willing to be uncomfortable, they're willing to be challenged. And for me, that has attracted the right people because I am a woman that is willing to do the work. But if I was putting out like a niche of a particular person that didn't resonate with me, surely I'm then going to be attracting clients that I'm not really wanting to spend time with. I never, ever, ever, ever want to be resentful in the work that I do. It's a deep privilege to hold space for people. And if I ever feel like, oh no, then I know that there's something off with me. It's not about the client. It means that either I'm overextending myself. It means that I'm overwhelmed. It means I'm not nourishing myself. And so I always attract clients that holistic balance of success is defined by them as an individual because they know who they are, or they want to know who they are, or they want to define success for themselves because they've tried the route that we're told is success, but has not worked for them. And then they're willing to do the icky work of finding that and making the changes and having the difficult conversations to get them to where they want to be. But more importantly, to get them to being who they want to be.
Breaking through that fear and just being so authentic. So I'm going to share this podcast with the next person who asks me that question and providing them that wonderful answer. It's perfect, Kemi.
Well, can I just say, just to add to that, can I just say as well, it's breaking through the fear again and again and
Yeah.
again and again and again. You know, that you have that one fear and then you break through that fear and then there's the next one and you break through. And that's why I joke about personal development is so annoying, because it's never ending. It's like you sort of think, oh, but I thought I'd sorted that out. But then you meet that person that triggers that feeling again. So then you have to get through that again and again and again. But the gift of living that way is that you get to take ownership of yourself. And I just think any struggle or any change or any of that uncomfortableness that comes around that is worth the gift of navigating the world as your full self.
I'm going to breathe that answer right in. And I know our time together is coming to an end, and I want to end on, I've got actually quite a few other questions that I wanted to ask you. So maybe we'll get you back on again another time. But if I was to ask you one last question that I think would have the most impact, I suppose, and get the most out of this time, what if you had the whole world listening and you had one message that you would want to share with them in this moment, what would it be?
Oh, that's a big question.
It's huge. So take your time.
You are allowed to be who you are. The world needs you to be exactly who you are. That's
perfect. That is so beautiful and so perfect. And that's you, isn't it? That's come from you. That hasn't come from a book. That's come from, Kemi, her experiences, her life, her journey.
Yeah. And even in saying that, I feel that. Yes. Because I spent so many years not knowing that was okay.
Yeah. Thank you beyond words for being here today. I've loved every millisecond of talking to you. You continue to inspire me and so many others, and I'll continue to watch your evolving journey. Thank you again.
I look forward to staying connected with you, Maritza. Thank you so much. It was a delight to speak with you.
Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.